On December 27th, 1986, a group of 34 Ajareo from the central Chaco of Paraguay started out on a bold mission to go and look for their traditional enemies, the Toto Biagasode, a territorial group of the same tribe, still untouched by civilization, living in the forests of the northern Chaco. On the morning of December 30th, when the expedition reached the village of their former enemies, the visitors were greeted with clubs and lances. In a few minutes, 5 of them lay dead on the ground, and the rest, including 4 critically wounded, made a hasty retreat. What was the background of this unfortunate encounter? What motivated the Gidai Gasode to make themselves vulnerable to their arch-enemies, approaching them without weapons? What have been the consequences of the encounter for the parties involved? Chaco, an Indian word for hunting ground, a semi-arid bushland covering the northern region of Paraguay, bordered by Bolivia to the north and west and Argentina to the south. The Chaco is also home to a dozen different Indian tribes, including the Ajareo. Responding to the harsh environment of this region and the expansion of Western culture, nomadic bands of these tribes have crisscrossed countless square kilometers of forests in search of food, water, and more importantly, a place of their own. This has been their life for as long as their tradition recalls. The Gidai Gasode, a branch of the larger Ajareo nation, have found a place of their own at Campo Loro. Although people here still roam in a semi-nomadic way, going out for hunting or seasonal labor contracts, they are continually drawn back to their settlement. Here they cultivate their summer gardens and meet in extended families. Here the church has its center of activities. Sunday morning at the Campo Loro settlement. Indians and missionaries have gathered for a worship service. KOD is the speaker. Today's Bible reading is from Matthew 28.
Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Today we understand, on the basis of this biblical text, why the missionaries had come to us. Do you remember when they told us about their great chief, Tu Padre, Jesus Christ, for the first time? Naturally, we only smiled, for he had never killed an enemy. How could he possibly be a chief?
Less than 25 years ago, these men and women lived as hunters and foragers in the northwest corner of the Chaco, adamantly defending their territory against every white intruder. At the same time, they carried on constant warfare against other territorial groups of their own tribe. In Ajareo culture, fierceness was highly valued, and in order to become a full-fledged warrior, it was essential to have killed an enemy. In the late 50s, the territorial integrity of the Ajareo nation was put to a test once more when an oil company made inroads into their homeland. The tribal warriors, in a gesture of Ajareo-like fierceness, ambushed company crews on some days and traded with them on others. In 1958, a Mennonite mission outreach to the Guiriguisode ended in the slaying of missionary Cornelius Isaac, terminating all hopes for permanent contact at that time. The early 60s saw a contact between Roman Catholic missionaries and the grassland Ajareo of the East, and in March of 1966, a team of New Tribes missionaries made a first contact with the Guiriguisode at Sierra Leone. The contact was solidified by an exchange of gifts, and the two parties agreed to establish a contact base at Sierra Leone. The head chief of all the Guiriguisode, Wahai, had settled down at the mission base, indicating that peace with the Conyone, or civilized, was now accepted as a fact. The newly established peace brought the Guiriguisode certain advantages, including improved tools and weapons. When missionaries with language proficiency from previous Ajareo work in Bolivia joined the team, daily Christian teaching of the Indians became a reality. Nevertheless, although more and more Guiriguisode gained faith in the Christian message, the old warring traditions were secretly kept alive. They continued to raid the Totobiaguisode villages. Warriors often came back with heroic accounts of having slaughtered entire groups of their traditional enemies. Since then, the Guiriguisode have moved further south, further into civilization, making Campo Loro their new home. Campo Loro stands for Parrot Land and is located 500 kilometers northwest of the capital city, Asuncion, and only 50 kilometers northeast of the Mennonite community of Philadelphia. Here the natives own just over 6,000 hectares of land. Old and new ways are blended here at the settlement. Language, social organization, foraging, and summer gardening remain much the same as in the past. At the same time, thousands of little items of Western civilization are integrated into the Ajareo cultural matrix. For more intensive land usage, cattle raising is being practiced as a new economic activity. Social and political relations at regional and national levels are consciously being built up. This way, the Guiriguisode are in the process of becoming citizens of two worlds, the traditional Ajareo culture and the white man's world, feeling comfortable to move back and forth between the two as needs and opportunities dictate. The missionaries have been instrumental in accompanying the group in this process of cultural adaptation. Ever since contact was made 22 years ago, the missionary families have lived with the group. Knowing the Ajareo language has enabled them not only to teach God's word to the natives, but also to interpret the white man's ways to them. In a two-room building, children attend school. Here they are being taught to read and write in their own language and to operate with numbers. The Spanish language and basic information about the national scene are also introduced step by step. In order to give minor medical help, the missionaries have set up a clinic staffed by 2 nurses. They also take care of inoculating the settler families against various diseases introduced into the area by the white population. Major medical problems must be treated at the hospital in Philadelphia. In summer, the temperature ranges between 30 and 45 degrees Celsius. During siesta, everyone takes a break from daily chores. They relax in the shade, discussing the events of the day and enjoying tereré, a cold tea made from the leaves of the yerba mate tree. This family of Toto Birgasodes has been living at Campo Loro since 1979, when their band was contacted and brought here by a group of Giday Gasode. They are a constant reminder to the local people that several bands of these tribal relatives, as yet uncontacted, still live in the northern forests. By late afternoon, work in the gardens has begun again. The women harvest squash and watermelons, 2 of the staple foods of the Ajareo. Far north of Campo Loro, in the midst of dense forests and untouched by civilization, lies a village of the Toto Birgasode. Step by step, they have been forced to relinquish large portions of their hunting grounds in the south. Due to previous wars with the Giday Gasode and white intruders, their numbers have been decimated. Instinctively, they split into smaller bands, partially as a defensive action against encroaching civilization, partially as a measure of ensuring their subsistence in an ever-shrinking habitat. This group of 24 individuals, under the leadership of Dukubaide, had arrived here after separating from the old chief Ugagide and his group about 3 years earlier. Here they found a refuge, possibly their last. The women look after the domestic operations of the village. They collect the firewood and the water, often walking great distances to obtain it. Children stay close to their mothers, learning by observation and play what will be expected of them when they grow up. There are noticeably few children, a consequence of infanticide, another of the band's defensive measures against the harsh survival conditions. Ihao burns branches of saltbrush. The powder is going to be used for food flavoring. This vegetable salt is a poor substitute for the mineral substance they used to collect on the salt flats in the north, where the hunters used to travel in late winter. These expeditions had to be given up when on one occasion the men returned to find their village devastated and many of the women and children massacred. One more atrocity committed by the Giday Gasode. Disigahui and Kuchoe are on a hunting and collecting trip, this time far into the south. On their journey, they will collect turtles, armadillos, and honey. If they are lucky, they may run into some peccaries, or even better, a giant anteater. But they must beware of the tribal taboos, or some evil spirit might be offended and take revenge. They cannot kill birds, rabbits, ostriches, or deer for food, since these animals are related to certain influential ancestral spirits. While walking through the scrub forest, special care needs to be given not to disturb a hibernating asoha, nighthawk, or pohi, big lizard. Oral tradition reports dozens of cases where fellow tribesmen died after meeting either of these most powerful animal gods. Following some anteater tracks, the hunters suddenly find themselves on a newly bulldozed trail made by land surveyors. They have seen similar trails before and know that a fence will be built here soon. They will have to be even more cautious now, but they cannot help being fascinated by fences. They have even constructed mock sections of fence and antennas from stolen wire right in their village. Civilization has yielded some benefits for the Toto Biergesode. Abandoned vehicles and old burned-out bridges left over from the Chaco War with Bolivia provide them with metal to make fine spears, hand axes, and arrows. But wood shovels and clubs have by no means been discarded. Today's hunt has been successful. Tonight the tribe feasts on tortoise, a process not to be watched by the faint of heart.
He loved us so much. He went out of his way, sending his son Jesus Christ so we could be saved. And now, fellow tribesmen, just as the missionaries were obedient, coming to preach God's message of salvation to our nation, so we must be obedient and share the same message with others. I am thinking of the Toto Biergesode. They still live in ignorance regarding God's plan for them. They still live in fear of us, their age-old enemies. We want to pray for them, and we want to look for an opportunity to find them and tell them about God's love. That is what I wanted to share today.
In the village of the Toto Biergesode, harmony between man and nature and the spirit world is being put to a severe test once more. Chamia has become sick during the night. Something is causing her severe pain. Only a Soha, the nighthawk, could do this. Baho, the group's woman shaman, has no doubt about it. Eui and Chi'i belong to the Igasitade, or wise ones, and possess the gift of curing many illnesses by their chanting. Together, they will attempt to cure Chamia and thereby restore harmony once more. First, the chanters isolate the pain and diagnose which ancestor has the power over this specific disease. Then they blow and speak the magic words into her body. This will diminish the power of the illness-causing spirit, and eventually the pain will disappear. During the winter months, water and food are scarce. At times, the group travels many days looking for a water hole that is not dried up. On these thirst journeys, the water potato is one of the few solutions offered by nature. The pulp from this large tuber is mashed and the moisture squeezed out and drunk. Winter drought, according to Ajoreo religion, is caused by Asoha. Before she goes into hibernation, she locks up nature. Therefore, rains and growth will not return before Asoha awakens and unlocks the growing season once more. It is late August. During the night, the quavering sound of Asoha's call was heard for the first time. This calls for an immediate response, the celebration of the Asoha cleansing ritual. Only a correct performance of this ritual can ensure a bountiful summer. Equipped with bells and rattles, the adult males move away some distance from the camp and build a new fire. With whistles from Palo Santo wood, they now call Asoha. The hunters implore her for a successful honey-gathering trip. Carefully, they paint their bodies for the occasion. An elder from the tribe waits a short distance away with bags and tools for the honey hunt. All young men are required to go, each one on his own, to search for a hive. Before leaving, they are asked to take off their ceremonial adornments. Six hours later, the hunters return. Each one is swatted on the back with a nahui switch to chase away all evil spirits which may have attached themselves to the hunters. Now they may have a drink of water. But careful, the first mouthful must be spit out. This is the time to curse anything that stands in the way of the tribe's prosperity. May all the inedible creatures disappear from the face of the earth. Next, the men form a procession that has to march along a narrow path between planted crosses. At sunset, they will chant the Nighthawk's song, the final supplication to Asoha to wake up and awaken all the productive forces of nature, ensuring an abundance of fruit and game. Christmas morning, 1986. The mission pilot has brought news that might just be the answer to the prayers and concerns of natives and missionaries alike. While on a routine flight to the northern Chaco, he has discovered what appeared to be a thatched hut, surrounded by 11 small garden plots. Could this be the village of the Totobeagosode? The news spreads through the community, and the general consensus is that somehow they must determine if this is truly their camp and whether it is presently inhabited. 4 men are chosen to go on a survey flight, accompanied by the prayers of the natives and the missionaries.
Ya kami semua he bagai tu doi mo tu ka he we ti tu de ka podoga awe tengai ba u mo to ya kami semua he ba bi tu to ya mo yo kino ni ka he to ya mo doi mo tu de to bi go su do ga ya kami se we de yo kai ga we ti tu ba o to awe ti nai go pi ka ta ka to ha mo wa Ikatakawa babi Jesus y amén.
The plane heads due north. The monotonous expanse of scrub forest is broken only by a few dirt roads or a lonely cattle ranch here and there. While stopping for a drink, Chikoi and Kuchaoi spot a kuteone, a tiny black bee which is most productive this time of year. They will actually track it to find its hive. Meanwhile, a group of women is collecting food at a different site, an hour's walk from the village. They gather the wild pineapple plant. The shoots are not considered to be the greatest food, but when roasted, they become a welcome fill-in when other food is scarce. Kode nuts have been found. These nuts have high protein value. They will be toasted, and after the shell is cracked, the nut center, about the size of a peanut, will be eaten. It has taken much concentration to keep up with the flight of the kuteone bee, but the effort has been rewarded. The hunters have found the hive in this tree. To get to the sweet substance becomes a matter of some routine climbing and chiseling. The foraging group, with Chi'i as bodyguard, is returning early today. Their bags have been filled to capacity. Now the cooking will begin. Chikoi has finally gotten to the substance of it all. The village is finally spotted. The Gidaigasode passengers confirm the pilot's early assumption that it is, in fact, a Totobiagasode village, and that it must be inhabited since the garden plots have been worked recently. Back at Campo Loro, the crowd awaits the news. The place where the village has been seen lies approximately 130 kilometers north of Campo Loro. The group unanimously agree that this is the opportunity they have waited for. Dehabi asks for volunteers to sign up for a visit to the Toto Biagasode village. The list grows until it includes 34 names. The next morning is filled with excitement as the expedition prepares to leave. The missionaries have agreed to use their pickups to transport the group of 34 men as far as the road conditions will permit. Arrival at kilometer 93. The pickups will now return, and the Guide Agasode will continue on foot, entering the uncharted forest. Mariade and Dehabi will scout for the group, on the basis of what they saw earlier from the air. Each one is loaded down with water, provisions, gifts, and hunting gear. In the village, the Toto Biagasode spend the afternoon manufacturing textiles and other crafts. This group of women is separating the fibers from the wild pineapple leaves. The raw material will eventually be worked into yarn, rope, bags, skirts, and mats. Once the fibers are dried, they're spun into yarn. Art comes to crafts as Aui completes his gourd rattle, burning a creative pattern into its surface. Rattles are for ceremonial use, but they are also understood to communicate peace when one Ajureo group approaches another on a visit. For the group of Guide Agasode, progress has been slow in the thorny forest. Overtaken by sunset, they are compelled to make camp and call it mealtime. Umai finds this to be a good moment for spiritual encouragement. Once more, they express their total dependence upon the Lord, acknowledging that He alone can make the venture succeed. Village life has slowed down for the evening. The children beg Adowahai for a story, preferably the one about Ehoai, the son of the clouds.
But the village boys were nasty to Ahoai. They teased him and threw sticks at him. Finally, Ahoai became very angry and turned himself into a billowing black rain cloud. Immediately it started pouring, and it rained for days and weeks until the water covered the whole earth. The naughty boys were drowned and turned into frogs. But even then, they kept on teasing each other in frog language.
All day Sunday and well into Monday, the Gidagasode men make their way through the dense forest. A lizard prefers to get out of the hiker's path. The men discover fresh footprints. During the late afternoon in the Toto Beagasode village, the children enjoy patata. Ihao treats her husband to a massage. All signs indicate that the Toto Beagasode village must be in close proximity, so the men set up another camp. Early next morning, scouts are sent out to survey the immediate surroundings. The plan is simple. 8 men rattling the peace gourd will go ahead, walking straight into the village, offering presents and explaining their peaceful intentions. The 2 civilized Toto Beagasode men will go with the first group, hoping to be recognized and well received by their tribesmen. Early the same morning, several members of the Toto Beagasode have come to their gardens to hoe weeds and to harvest squash. The mission group come upon the Toto Beagasode by surprise. They immediately yell to them, "We have come in peace. We have good intentions." They run into the village, rattling their peace gourd and carrying their presents. One present was to be a tape recorder with the recording button pushed. What follows is the actual recording of what happened in the village. After a few moments of clubs and spears descending mercilessly on the visitors, the battle is over. The result, 5 dead, 4 wounded who managed to escape to safety, and loud victory yells in the village. Outside the village, the survivors stand, stunned at first, but then they recover control of their feelings and immediately try to gain the trust of the villagers by starting negotiations. The Gidagasode symbolize their intentions by putting down their weapons. The Totobeagasode believe that because they have been enemies in the past, and since they have killed their men, they cannot be friends. Kadui throws away the spear that has been used against him, showing that he has no intention of using it. The villagers are not convinced. They fear revenge against them. The negotiations for peace go on from 9 o'clock in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. The visitors have run out of water. They are thirsty and plead with the villagers to share their water. Compassion moves the Totobeagasode men to bring out a bowl of water. Heiji receives it for the visitors. Trust is built up in the villagers' minds. Hope among the visitors. Then Kadui feels the moment has come to make a new proposal. In a ceremonial greeting, the two parties match up, person to person, the visitors touching the villagers. According to Ajoreo culture, this physical contact indicates assumption of a lifelong responsibility for one another. Immediately, the exchange of news begins. The visitors question the whereabouts of Chief Ugagude. They are told he lives with the rest of the group in another village further north. Soon they find themselves in the village. Together, they bury the dead. Ahiakai. Pahe. Chikabiade. Wasade. Umai. The wounded must be cared for. First thing in the morning, they need to be moved to the road. What about the Toto'bega Sode? Will they consider coming along to the world of the Kanyone, the civilized? Their concern is that the Kanyone will want to seek revenge, since they killed 5 of their friends. The Toto'bega Sode are assured that the civilized are led by the same good spirit that they themselves are. The Kanyone will rejoice with them, now that they, who were enemies, now want to live together in peace. With this assurance, the Toto'bega Sode decide as a group to accompany their visitors back to the curious world that they are talking about. The village is left behind. Because of the wounded, the journey is slow. It takes 4 days to reach the main road. Several scouts had been sent out ahead of the group. From the nearest ranch, they had sent a message to Campo Loro asking for help. When the main group reached the road, medical help and transportation are waiting for them. The most urgent case is transported on a motorcycle to the nearest landing strip. The rest of the group will travel to Campo Loro by tractor and trailer. January 4th, 1987. Once more it is Sunday morning at Campo Loro. Although badly needing hospitalization, the 4 wounded men insist on speaking to their church community first. The settlers crowd into the church to hear their testimony. Kadui is the first to speak.
The spear hit me on the side of my face. I grabbed hold of it and wrestled it away from the attacker. Now he had no weapon. When he ran back to the village, I was able to escape into the bush. I am so proud of the way our people behaved. No one tried to avenge the deaths of our men. If just one of our people had tried to kill a Toto'bega Sode, it would have been disastrous. I realize this must be a heartbreaking experience for the women who have lost their husbands. But I ask you, please, do not mistreat the people we are bringing here. That would not be God's way. Remember, it would be an answer to our prayers in these people as a result of seeing God's love in our lives. Would themselves want to become His children.
The rest of the expedition and the 24 newcomers have arrived at Campo Loro. With curiosity and a little suspicion, the Toto'bega Sode view their new surroundings. They are surprised to see so many civilized Ajureo at the settlement. In accordance with the adoption ceremony carried out several days earlier in the forest, the Toto'bega Sode are taken to the homes of their various hosts. By Ajureo standards, this means that the host will provide not only food and shelter, but will also protect the newcomers against any kind of hostility, and will introduce them to the various aspects of life here at the settlement. In the church, it is Dehabi's turn to speak.
I am so thankful to see you all again. In reality, I am actually quite well, because it's only my body that has been hurt. My spirit is strengthened because of what we have accomplished. We have acted according to what God's Word says in Matthew chapter 28. I encourage you, yes, I demand that you receive the Totobiegosode without hostility. It would be wrong if you didn't. All who agree with what we have said, raise your hands.
While the immediate families of the deceased mourn in their homes, the feelings of sorrow are overshadowed by the excitement of the crowd regarding the new arrivals. Kadui and Dehabi's concerns about receiving the Totobeagosode with love are well-founded. An invisible battle between harmony and disharmony will develop at Campo Loro during the weeks to come as a number of adversities come up. First, there are tense moments when news from the hospitals in Philadelphia and Loma Plata report the critical state of the wounded. Kadui's and Dehabi's injuries are so bad that doctors have difficulty understanding how they ever made it back. Disappointment rises when the Gidagasode settlers learn that newspapers in the capital question the motives of their expedition to find the Totobeagosode, considering it a manhunt, stating that they had been pursued and paid by the foreign missionaries to catch the wild Indians. The news articles further state that the Gidagasode forced the Totobeagosode against their will to leave their territory in order to make them slaves of the white landowners. Worse comes to worse when, after a week or two, most Totobeagosode newcomers fall ill. They have come into contact with bacteria and viruses their bodies have never encountered before. No immunity against colds and flus, coughs, fever, and runny noses bring the newcomers to the edge of despair. Is this how Dupade, the good spirit of Konyoni, avenges the deaths of the 5 Gidagasode? 2 missionary nurses do all they can to alleviate the situation. Doctors are flown in. The most seriously ill are hospitalized in Philadelphia. In spite of these efforts, death takes its toll. Bajo, the shaman, gets sick one evening and is dead by the next morning. According to her group, she had accurately predicted the arrival of the outsiders in the Totobeagosode village. Kikia, another veteran woman of the group, succumbs to heart complications while being treated in the hospital at Philadelphia. Another frustration has to do with an unfamiliar diet. Hesitantly, a number of new foodstuffs like rice, potatoes, and bread are tried but quickly rejected. Fortunately, there are also familiar staples like squash, beans, and watermelon available. Some hosts go out of their way to help the newcomers to adjust and recuperate from their illnesses. They remember only too well how they themselves had to learn to eat strange food and build up immunity against the white man's diseases 22 years earlier. The Gidagasode see themselves as citizens of 2 worlds, the Ajareo culture and Konyoni's way of life. They feel confident in introducing the Totobeagosode to the curiosities, challenges, and opportunities of this new way of life. Initially, Eui thought motor vehicles moved by themselves, like animals, with humans as mere riders. At the mill, he comments about having stolen boards from the bridges up north and wondering what kind of axes the Konyoni might use to chop the logs to such precision. Paid labor money, and marketing will constitute another large area of knowledge to be picked up by the Toto Biergasode in their time of transition towards dual citizenship. Dukubaide is introduced to the different types of money used and how some is hard and some is soft. The host tells him if he goes inside this house, our friend will give you konyoni food for it. At a later date, on a visit to the co-op in Philadelphia, Dukubaide learns that the same money can be traded in for a much greater selection of things, most of which he has never seen and has no idea how to use. Teaching is a two-way process. The extent to which the Toto Biergasode have mastered a series of survival skills, which are gradually being forgotten by the second generation at Campo Loro, become apparent every time the members of the two groups embark on a joint hunting venture. Today, here, Chi'i has discovered tracks. This is going to be a lesson on butchering anteaters the Toto Biergasode way. First, the hair is burned off. That takes care of fleas and ticks and allows for cleaner butchering. Last, the various cuts are stored in a pineapple fiber bag. Then the hunters will call it a successful day. Kadui's heart is filled with thanksgiving that God is finally giving him the opportunity to share his Christian faith with the Toto Biergasode. Knowing the traditional Ajoreo explanation for the creation of all things, he now tries to convey the Christian doctrine of creation to them. The Toto Biergasode are interested, but fail to grasp the deeper meanings of the teaching at first. That doesn't concern Kadui, since it only mirrors his own initial response to a similar lesson. He assures them that they will understand in time. This is the hope that the larger community at Campo Loro cherishes also. Now, since the two groups of the Ajoreo nation have been reconciled to each other, the next step will be that the Toto Biergasode will be reconciled to God, their creator. Umai, the first one slain, still holding the Bible in his hand, had written his name over the following verses of 2 Corinthians, chapter 5. God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting men's sins against them, and he has committed to us the message of reconciliation. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. This had been the goal of the 34 Christian Ajoreo who set out to visit the Toto Biergasode in December of 1986, of whom 5 never returned.